Hello, welcome to this virtual service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Waynesboro. We are an LGBTQ welcoming congregation committed to full inclusion and full participation of people on that spectrum of sexual orientation and gender identity who have in the past not been included in much of American religion and who still are excluded from some sectors of American religious life. Our aim through our words and actions is to draw the circle of love and full inclusion larger today than it was yesterday, and larger tomorrow than it is today. In the words of a hymn in our hard-covered hymnal, "Wake now, my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Welcome to this time of worship." I'm Laura Riggin. I've come today to sit in the front yard of our Chalice House here on Pine Avenue to welcome you to this service. I'm a proud member of UUFW because of the opportunity this fellowship provides to be part of a liberal religious community here in the Shenandoah Valley. I appreciate the principles to which UUs adhere, among them the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the use of justice, equity, and compassion in our relationships, and the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Let us light the chalice of our hearts with these words by Katie Romano Griffin. Come, let us enter this time of hope and community. Come, let us enter this time with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and compassion. Come, let us enter this time with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this time present to the beloved companions who move beside us in both virtual and in-person ways. Come into this time mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this time and let us worship.
Our words of prayer are A Prayer for the Post Office by Reverend Julia Hamilton. This is a nonpartisan prayer about something as mundane as mail, as gentle as the swish of a letter falling to the floor by the door. This is a prayer for stamps and stamp collectors, the quietest of hobbies, for pen pals and thank you card writers, for grandparents who always remember your birthday, and love letters from the war kept at the bottom of a drawer. This is a prayer for the quiet dignity of the blue mailbox standing like a sentinel on the corner, portal to anywhere, for just the cost of a stamp. Walking to the mailbox, down the block and around the corner, was my daughter's first independent adventure, the responsibility of an envelope, addressed and ready in her small and serious hand. Her nervous departure from the front door alone and her triumphant return minutes later. I did it, Mama. I mailed the letter all by myself. Do you remember the wonder of it? Dropping a letter in one place, mouth of the box swinging open and shut, eating the envelope like Cookie Monster, only to have that same letter reappear days later in another place. It is a mundane miracle. When I was a teenager learning how to drive, my mother set up garbage cans in front of our house so I could practice parallel parking. Our mailman, swinging by from house to house, stopped with a big smile to shout, "Turn the wheel, cut it hard, that's right, now straighten it out." His brown arm waving in circles as we both grinned with the joy of it. A simple thing, feeling like part of something, a community, maybe, where mail carriers and teenage drivers are all part of the same world. I remember how quickly he would run up and down the front steps, even in the hot and humid summer. Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. This is a prayer for the carriers on their routes, the clerk at the window, the backroom sorters, and the delivery truck drivers, moving mountains one piece at a time, passing along that which was entrusted to them. Electric bills, bank statements, birthday cards, ballots. Hear us, God of the taken for granted things, divine mystery of overnight delivery, spirit of civic life. May we preserve this minor magic of letter and stamp, scale and package, sorting machine and postbox, so that our children do not shake their heads and wonder at all the things we allowed to slip away. Each week as we come together, we share the significant joys and sorrows of our personal lives. This week, Aaron Milnes writes, Eric is still at Augusta Health, but out of the ICU and doing much better. We don't know yet when he will be discharged. We greatly appreciate all the positivity and support folks have sent through Facebook and have been sharing these messages with him. Aaron continues, please keep in your thoughts my mother and father-in-law, Chuck and Betty Guest, who had to evacuate their home near Salinas, California because of wildfires. They are safe at a hotel and their helper comes daily, and so far their neighborhood is not burning. But given their poor health and disability, this move is extremely challenging. Chuck and I wish we could be there in person. And finally, she says, please also keep in your thoughts everyone who is dealing with addiction, chronic illness, and mental health problems during these dark times. She says that she, Erin, lost her dear friend Mary in June because of the extraordinary disruption of supports like 12-step programs and mental health services. Many people may not seem to be in trouble from the outside, but are struggling mightily to maintain important routines of self-care. Please consider reaching out to the people in your life, even if you don't usually contact them regularly. Let us hold these and all the unspoken joys and sorrows of our lives in our hearts quietly together.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
Outside, Inside by Laura Bogle. Outside, the flags fly down the highway, hanging onto the back of large trucks or on the chest of a man. Outside, there is a grabbing and taking, a staking and restaking of territory claimed. The roads cut, the oil burned, blockades erected, and walls built. Outside, the borders between us are made visible in noise, colors, ballots, signs, and signals. Inside resides the breath of common ancestors, the child who plays with no thoughts of malice, the heart turned toward suffering, the taste of figs ripening in the lingering autumn heat, the sliver of an orange moon low in the evening November sky. Inside begins something you might call a prayer. Let us kneel down, not to God, or nation or ideology, but to what is inside, a feeling, a connection, a welling like the waters at the very beginning of time, unpolluted and gently flowing, sweet and dark and healing. Let us kneel down to the persistent possibility that the life and love within prevail. Let us release what is inside outward in beauty, spilling towards each other until all merges. Unstoppable well of knowing that we will only ever be saved by one another.
Like many of you, I don't send as much first-class mail as I used to. Time was when my mother would write a letter to her mother 2 counties and 50 miles away every week because with the way the telephone monopoly worked back then and the tightness of our family budget, Mom never thought she could afford to make the long-distance phone call. The day after her letter left our rural mailbox, 2 days at most, Grandma received it in her rural mailbox. Grandma sent her response and Mom received it in the same week she'd sent her letter. Every week, a 2-way exchange of chat about daily life or family events. When I married and moved out of my parents' home at age 18, I just moved across the county, but it was still a local call, so I called Mom rather than using the post office. But a decade later, when I was on a graduate exchange in Germany, the limitations of telephone options meant that I couldn't afford to call home from Europe. So Walter and I depended on airmail. It wasn't as fast as Mom's letter to Grandma, but it was okay. It usually got to its addressee in a week or slightly more. Back in the US, I paid bills by first-class mail and again gave up the practice of most personal mail, except to overseas friends. But somewhere along the way, most of us Many of us certainly switched to online banking and electronic bill paying. We turned to email for most personal and basic business contact long before social media like Facebook overtook our imaginations and our days. Everything was different, but we still knew that a letter would efficiently reach its destination. The post office made up for the reduced first-class traffic by delivering more advertising mail, junk mail we called it, that we didn't often want to see much of in our boxes, and then they made up for it by delivering vast quantities of packages from Amazon and other online merchants that we did want to receive. And we still trusted that even with each shift in focus, each change in the way our economy worked, first class was still secure and reliable, still there for us when we needed it. On the building that formerly was the Washington, D.C. Post Office and now is the home of the Smithsonian Institution's National Postal Museum, there is an inscription whose original wording was by Dr. Charles W. Eliot, former president of Harvard, and modifications to the wording then made by President Woodrow Wilson. The inscription reads, "Messenger of sympathy and love, servant of parted friends, consoler of the lonely, bond of the scattered family, enlarger of the common life, carrier of news and knowledge, instrument of trade and industry, promoter of mutual acquaintance, of peace and of goodwill among men and nations." Now, that is a tall order for any institution to fill, from messenger of love to instrument of trade and industry, and finally, promoter of peace and goodwill among nations. It is certainly true that in earlier eras, the post office was held in high esteem. Even more, the civil servants whose job it was to make sure the mail was delivered in a secure and timely manner. Remember the unofficial motto of the post office's letter carriers? Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. The framers of our republic considered the mail such a key function of a free and flourishing country that they included Congress's power to establish a post office and postal roads in the US Constitution. And there's a large body of case law in suits that made it to a decision by the US Supreme Court that informs what the powers and their limits more fully are. Our economy and institutions have evolved in many ways for good and ill over the couple centuries and beyond since our establishment as a republic. But the post office has always been a key component of maintaining a free and just society. The post office played a key role in the abolitionist movement, spreading the word of greater justice through abolition of slavery, even within slaveholding states. So, what has happened? It didn't take President Trump long in office before he started attacking institutions like the post office that had always been seen as essential to our national well-being. The closer we got to the current election season, the more he has insisted that voting by mail is inherently untrustworthy and a locus of election fraud. He has continuously claimed that if he loses the upcoming election, it will only be because of widespread election fraud. His statements about the post office have veered into conspiracy theory, even as he has politicized key non-political functions like the post office. He appointed a huge campaign contributor as Postmaster General, and the Postmaster, under the guise of updating the Postal Service, has ripped out equipment, mailboxes, and more with full knowledge that it would affect the delivery of the mail and had the potential to disrupt absentee voting. And President Trump threatened to veto a coronavirus relief package if it included emergency funding for the US Post Office. Now, we don't often need to turn to singer-songwriters, pop culture figures to receive our political wisdom, but we could receive some from Taylor Swift, who tweeted to her followers these words, quote, "Trump's calculated dismantling of the USPS proves one thing clearly. He is well aware that we do not want him as our president. He's chosen to blatantly cheat and put millions of Americans' lives at risk in an effort to hold on to power," end quote. Now, it's true that that may be more of a blanket statement that is fully supportable, but Trump didn't win by a popular majority to begin with, and his poll ratings do not suggest that he is a favorite this time around, though we should not think we can project the legitimate outcome of elections before the people have voted and the votes are in. Whichever way the election goes, preserving the ability of the people to choose their leaders is of supreme importance. Our democratic institutions are at risk from those who want to control results. This is certain, but always also at risk from those who do not take the responsibility of participation seriously. Unitarian Universalist congregations covenant to affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. There is spiritual value in preserving and protecting our democracy. So not only should we vote on our leaders at every level, we should engage with our legislators and with the administration to resist every degradation of our institutions, such as we now see in the ongoing attack on the post office. And so in benediction, may we do our part to keep our democratic processes viable, refusing to accept the diminution of the important role and standing of the US Postal Service, refusing to give in to conspiracy theories. May we encourage others to do likewise, and so continue to establish and preserve such liberty as we find in our system for the benefit of posterity. The well-being of us all depends on how well we secure and grow the circle of liberty and justice until it eventually truly encompasses all of us. Amen, and blessed be.
Hello, this is Renee Herrell, and I'm with your social justice team. This November 3rd, 2020 is a very important election. First of all, you need to be registered to vote, and your registration information has to be current, and that deadline is October 13th. There are 3 ways to vote this year: early voting, absentee voting by mail-in, and voting in person on Election Day. I'm talking to you now about absentee voting by mail-in. The first thing you have to do is to submit an application in order to get your ballot to vote. To do that, go to www.elections.virginia.gov, and you can complete the application online and submit it. Or you can print out the application, fill it out, and either mail it, send it as a scanned document as an attachment through email, or you can fax it to your local registrar's office. If you live in Stanton, you can call 540-332-3840 in order to get an application mailed to you. The ballots will start going out to people around September 18th. So you want to get your application form in as soon as possible, so there's no question that it's in there and ready to go and for you to get your ballot. You'll be able to track online when your application was received. Hope this has been helpful, and hope that you have a good evening.